Hi everybody, it's Miss Austin again, and we're going to finish creating this unit circle. I hope you watched the first video that explained how we're taking those special right triangles. We just did quadrant 1 and where these coordinates came from and what these coordinates actually tell us. They're actually the cosine and the sine value of these angles. Now, I only talked about angles, so before we fill in the whole thing, let's actually just go around and fill in the angles and the equivalent radians, okay? On this template, if you choose to use this template, there's a spot for the degrees, and then right next to it is the radians. So if we're going around the circle, this is 0 degrees or 0 radians. We already have the 30 there. The 30s go by 1/6, so that's pi over 6. 45 degrees is pi over 4 radians. 60 degrees is pi over 3. And we've got 90, which is pi over 2 radians. Next, we've got 120 degrees, which is 2 pi over 3. This is 135, which is 3/4 pi. This is 150 degrees, which is 5 pi over 6. We have 180, which is 1 pi, halfway around. I guess I better zoom in a little bit here. Okay, this is 210, which is 7 pi over 6. 225, which is 5 pi over 4. This is 240 degrees, which is 8/6, which reduces to 4 pi over 3. We've got 270 degrees, which is 3 pi over 2. 300, which is 5 pi over 3. 315, which is 7 pi over 4. 330, 11 pi over 6. And finally, 360 degrees, which is 2 pi. If you're still struggling on those, you can go back and watch last week's video, and there's some helpful strategies on how to figure those out quickly. All right, so now that we've got all those in, we're going to take the idea of these triangles, and these triangles just repeat themselves around each quadrant. And the only thing that's going to change is whether or not these coordinates are positive or negative. Because remember, we're in the coordinate plane, right? To get to this area, it's positive, positive. Over here, a point would be negative, positive. Okay, so it's the idea there's a circle here, we're in the coordinate plane, and we've got triangles. We've got a lot going on. So let's first just go do, I find it's easy to maybe just do replicate this 30-degree triangle in each quadrant. So one way to do that, so that's this one right here at 150 degrees. So I'm going to connect that one down to the one down here, which is this 210. So I'm going to connect those two dots like this. Can you see that these two are the same as that one? That's why color is helpful. I'm going to just go ahead and do this all at once. Okay. So now let's just look at this one up here in quadrant 2. So what are the coordinates here? It's still the square root of 3 over 2. That's the long leg, and up 1/2. But I'm over in quadrant 2. So I go negative square root of 3 over 2, positive 1/2. Negative square root of 3 over 2, positive 1/2. Okay, and then this one down here, if we look at this one, right? How do I describe how to get to this point? I go negative square root of 3 over 2 and negative 1/2. They're both negative. Okay, and then we still have this one over here, which you could go like connect that to the one in quadrant 1. There it is. How would you describe how to get to this point? You would go positive square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. Okay, now let's go do the 45s. So that's right here at 135, and then at 225. And the 45s are nice because a 45, 45, 90, the legs are the same. So it's the square root of 2 over 2. And if you can't remember how we got those, you could watch Miss Eisencraft's video. She worked backwards using her special right triangle rules. So to get to this point, I'm going to go negative square root of 2 over 2, positive square root of 2 over 2. So notice in quadrant 2, the x, whoops, Miss Austin, then the x coordinate is negative and the y coordinate is positive. I don't have any magic white out, so I have to put a plus there. Okay, down here, it's negative, negative. Both the x and y coordinate are negative. And then we've got to draw this one over here in quadrant 4. And in quadrant 4, starting at the origin, you go positive, negative. So the x coordinate is positive and the y coordinate is negative. And I did not put that on that one. Not on my A game today. Okay. Last triangle is the 60 degree. So let's go put that in. And we could do the other one right now too. Why not? Okay, so all of these triangles are going to have the coordinates of 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. So over here in quadrant 2, negative 1/2, positive square root of 3 over 2. Negative 1/2, positive square root of 3 over 2. Down here, negative, negative. Both the x and y are negative. Negative 1/2, negative square root of 3 over 2. And then over here, we've got positive, negative. Positive, negative. Make sure that looks like the square root symbol there. Okay. So now the only coordinates we haven't filled in are these over here at 0, 90, 180. Okay, and it might seem odd because there's no triangle, correct? But this is the radius, right? And the radius on the unit circle is 1. So let's just start right here. How would you describe how to get to this point? 0, 1. How would you describe how to get to this point? 1, 0. How would you describe to get to this point? Negative 1, 0. And then down here, 0, negative 1. Okay. Now, let's remind ourselves, what's so great about this? This allows us to determine and evaluate the cosine and sine of any of these angles or radians. The cosine ends up being the x-coordinate, and the sine is the y-coordinate. So if somebody said, what is the sine of 330? You would go to 330, boom, here's the coordinate, The sine is the y coordinate. The sine of 330 is negative 1/2. What is the cosine of 5 pi over 4? Well, here's 5 pi over 4. The cosine is the x coordinate. Boom, negative square root of 2 over 2. So as you're working through your activities, have one of these by your side. As you get more and more sophisticated, hopefully you could visualize, and if you had to take an assessment or do something without the aid of a unit circle, you could eventually replicate just this first quadrant for yourself, and you would be able to kind of, through deductive reasoning, figure out the answer as long as you understand what's going on here. Okay, so what you're going to be doing this week is just finding the exact trig values of angles and or radians. So one more time, if I say, what is the cosine of 270? Go to 270, the cosine is the x coordinate, 0. Okay, what are the positive and negative things here? This is just saying which trig values are positive or negative in this quadrant. So let's add that in real quick. So over here, and we're only doing sine and cosine this week, both the coordinates are positive. So I kind of wrote on this. So sine and cosine are both positive. Over here, the x coordinate is negative. So cosine is negative and sine is positive. So cosine is negative, sine is positive. Down here, both the coordinates are negative. So the cosine is negative and so is the sine. Sine and cosine are both negative. And then over here, you've got positive, which is your x coordinate, that's your cosine. So cosine is positive and your sine is negative. So sine is negative and cosine is positive. I hope this helps. I highly recommend, well, not highly recommend, one of the assignments is to create this and send us a picture. And hopefully by making it, it will help conceptualize and start to get your mind thinking about what all this means. See you soon.